I would say a huge turning point for us was when we started automated pricing. We were leaving huge amounts of money on the table before we automated our pricing. So I would say to anyone who's just getting started, get Price Labs or some other, pricing automation tool. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing pricing wise. And we left literally thousands of dollars on the table. And that's sort of what has finally turned the business around from, barely having any cash flow to cash flowing pretty well.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Yona Weiss. Excited to be here. As always, it's a wonderful day, and it's been a long day, actually. And this isn't even my last podcast for the day, but there I go, rambling. Here with another amazing guest. We have Dana Boyd on the show, all the way from Northern California. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to speak with you. Thanks so much for joining us. And for our listeners who don't know who you are, give us a little bit of a background and who's Dana Boyd?
Yeah, so I live in the Bay Area. I lived in San Francisco for about 18 years and I just moved to the North Bay. So happy to be out of the city, but I am a short-term real estate investor and I actually work in commercial real estate full-time as my W-2 job. So I've always been around real estate just as my actual job. And we just got started in short-term rental investing about a year ago.
Very cool. So what have you been doing in the actual commercial real estate side of the business?
So I am actually a property manager. Cool. Don't like to tell people I'm a property manager because as soon as they hear that, they think I am a residential real estate property manager. And that's definitely not what it is. It's a whole other ballgame. Mm-hmm. So I manage commercial properties on behalf of landlords or agents who work with landlords. So I have a couple of high-rise buildings downtown that I manage.
Gotcha. Like office buildings.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's very much like a normal 9-to-5 job. So in that sense, it's different than residential property management. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've basically been involved in real estate in some sense my whole career.
Wow. That's amazing. That's awesome. It's really, it gives you the exposure to the real estate markets and to know what's going on, especially in a place like San Francisco, where office, I'm sure, has made some big changes over the past couple of years. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's kind of funny. I've worked in commercial real estate my whole life, and I almost feel sort of silly that it took me as long as it did to realize that I am helping other people get incredibly wealthy in real estate. Why don't I do this for myself? So anyway, I don't know why it took so long to make that realization, but here we are and I'm happy it's finally moving forward.
Yeah. How did you make that realization? Like, where did you find this out? Was it like a podcast or you met someone or where'd you...
Yeah. So, it kind of was a combination of all of those things, meeting people, listening to different podcasts. I think the straw that broke the camel's back was actually during COVID. I sort of like to make a joke and say I have COVID to thank for my short-term rental investment strategy. But it was actually right as COVID was sort of hitting the United States that I had this realization. I had just had my first child at that time, my son. And so right as San Francisco was one of the first cities to lock down. So we locked down and it was like everybody stopped going to work. Yeah. Everybody that worked, normal W-2 jobs stopped going into the office. And at that time I was going in every day. And so, I thought, okay, well, maybe my company will tell us to stop going in as well. They said we had to go in no matter what during the lockdown. And I was a little scared to go in because, COVID was coming to the United States. This was before masks were even really a thing. And I told my company, I said, well, I'm a little nervous to go in. I don't want to infect my son. He's just a baby. I'm also scared of COVID. This was a long time ago. And they said, you have no choice. You have to come in. And so I just thought, you know what? I never want to have to be dependent on, a W-2 job again.
Sure.
It was also during that time sort of that we were on lockdown. So we had tons of free time, couldn't leave our house. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and sort of like everybody else, put two and two together. And I thought, the true path to financial freedom is through real estate investing and not working a W-2. And I just thought, the way my company is treating me and, sort of this realization, I just thought real estate investing is the path.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. Like that's one of the main things that he talks about, like sort of right at the beginning of the book, right? When you're being treated in a way or getting these kind of pushbacks from a job, and just kind of to think outside the box and to realize that you have to take control of your own financial education, financial freedom, and not to be dependent on someone else, which the majority of the people are.
Exactly. And I mean, I am thankful for the jobs and the companies I have worked for, definitely. But just, I think that fear mostly for, my son, and this was before like anybody knew anything about COVID. I just thought this is not the way to ultimate financial freedom, is relying on a company.
Yeah, 100%. And so how did short-term rentals specifically, I know that you guys bought a short-term rental, a cabin somewhere in Northern California. I don't even know where that is, but you'll have to maybe tell us about that and how you found that. But how did you stumble upon that? Because I mean, real estate investing is vast. There's so many different things you can do.
Yeah. So it did actually take me some time to, this was at the very beginning, and I thought, okay, I just need to get a lay of the land. So I started listening to podcasts, reading books, talking to people, trying to have informational interviews, doing everything I can to sort of explore all the different avenues that one can go down.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I think it just came down to what I saw as the cash flow that you could make. I knew it was going to be a lot of work, and, my husband and I are very busy as it is with our normal jobs. But I just thought, you know what, we will just have to grind it out. And, with the cash flow, the cash return that you can make on short-term rentals, I just thought this is going to be the best bang for our buck.
And it really is. I mean, I haven't seen many types of assets that cash flow in the way that short-term rentals do. I have yet to see anything like that. It's just incredible.
Right. And the other thing is, I guess in the big picture, we're slightly older than some folks are when they start investing. We're in our late 30s. And, if I was in my early 20s, maybe I'd have more time to build up a portfolio of long-term rentals. But the one thing that we don't have, I would say, is time. So, that was the other thing that we took into consideration.
Right. But it still does take time. I mean, it's not passive, right? Meaning running Airbnb or whatever it is that you're doing. I'm sure setting it up took some time, but also running it on a weekly or daily basis, that does take time, right?
It takes a lot of time. I guess I thought I could scale more quickly with short-term rentals, but I mean, the time it takes to operate them, is definitely not passive. I mean, I have 2 jobs now. So, there's that.
I mean, I've heard from a lot of short-term rental investors that they automate as much as possible, from the messaging to, the dealing with the cleaners and all that kind of stuff. Like so much can be automated, but still, I'm sure there's a lot of monitoring and just a lot of involvement.
There's always going to be involvement. And, we've tried to automate as much as we possibly can. And that's been a huge learning curve as well. And it's helped. I mean, it's helped us automate the processes, but there's just always going to be an aspect of it where you have to communicate with guests, and no machine can answer for you in the way that you want it to.
Yeah. So tell me more about this place that you guys actually have. Like, where exactly is that?
Yeah. So I guess if you're from Northern California, you probably you maybe have heard of it. If you're not, you definitely haven't.
Right.
It's called Pinecrest, California. The town that it's closest to that folks might have heard of is, I would say, well, it's an hour outside of Yosemite.
Okay.
If you've heard of it, a little town called Sonora, it's close to Sonora. People go there who are either going to this small ski area that's close to Pinecrest, or they're going to Yosemite, and they're just, staying a bit outside of the valley.
Gotcha. So it's more of kind of like vacation, like really vacation spot, people taking a time off.
It's a true vacation spot. And a lot of the other houses that are there are short-term rentals. That's part of the reason why we picked the area. Also, because I thought, okay, if our neighbors are doing short-term rentals, hopefully they won't be, annoyed of us when we start having guests come by. And it's one of those areas that is heavily dependent on its short-term rental market for, business in the town. So that was the other reason why we picked it. There's a mountain close by where people do skiing and snowboarding in the winter. And then there's also a lake that people use in the summer. So that's another reason why we picked it, is because I thought, okay, we can capture both ends of the market here, not only summer or winter, but, a summer and winter area.
Right. And it's close enough, I'm sure, that you guys visit yourselves, I would assume.
It's about 3 hours from here. That was another consideration. We thought, okay, for our first time, I don't want to do this someplace, across on the other side of the United States. I just felt more comfortable if we could have the ability to drive there if we needed to. That was important to us. And we did spend a lot of time driving up there. So yeah, it's about 3 hours from here.
Okay, cool.
So everybody go visit Pinecrest. It's a great area.
Yeah, we'll put the link to your Airbnb in the show notes so everyone can check it out if anyone's up in Northern California.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's an awesome lodge. It's a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, large cabin with a hot tub and all kinds of cool stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind sharing, because I'm sure you've learned a tremendous amount over the past year or two since you got started in this. What are some of those things that someone who is starting out, like myself, I'm personally looking at short-term rentals and trying to find my way, but I know it's challenging to kind of get over some of those humps and find the right market and find the right property. But really more than anything, learning the processes that come along with it. I mean, are there any ways to kind of get over those learning curves, or you just have to go through it and figure out what works?
I think you just kind of have to go through it and figure out what works. I mean, I would say a huge turning point for us was when we started automated pricing. We were leaving huge amounts of money on the table before we automated our pricing. So I would say to anyone who's just getting started, get Price Labs or some other, pricing automation tool. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing pricing wise. And I mean, we left literally thousands of dollars on the table. And that's sort of what has finally turned the business around from, barely having any cash flow to cash flowing pretty well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And there's little things like that, like little tools that you learn along the way, like Price Labs and getting, different market data, or just getting the right type of messaging templates, right? So you can message your guests when they go in, when they go out, when they check in, when they check out, all that kind of stuff.
And these are all things that, you do kind of have to learn along the way. And I mean, it did take us a good, I would say 6 months until I felt like the place was really up and running. I mean, we haven't even been through a full year yet. And it has really only been the past couple of months that I feel like it's turned around. So all in all, I think it will probably take a full year until it's truly up and running, automated on its own. So, I think it just takes some time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you part of any of these groups or Facebook groups or masterminds that talk about short-term rentals all the time?
Yeah, I'm part of a couple of Facebook groups, short-term rental Facebook group. I am always trying to get involved in Bigger Pockets, things like that. I just try to follow a lot of the groups, go to different meetups around the Bay Area for real estate investors. Anything I can do to network, I try to do because I figure it can't hurt.
Absolutely. And there's so much to learn also from those groups, just little things people do with their guests and stuff like that. So is the plan to scale, get another property, get another 2, keep doing this, and then be able to have enough cash flow to live off of?
Yeah, that is the plan. Keep going, get another property. I don't know if I would do one again in California here. For the next one, we're thinking about looking out of state. It's going to be a little bit harder just, with our jobs and my son and how to do that. But we're thinking about either just biting the bullet and going for it, or looking for a partner and trying to partner with someone and make that happen, because we are thinking about going all the way out into the East Coast, into the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah, that's a great area. It has become a little bit oversaturated, I would say, the Smoky Mountains. It's still extremely popular. Yeah. But I'm sure, as you know, it's just so many people out there.
Yeah. So many people out there, but I think, they go out there for a reason. I think it's a great area, a great market. Might it be a little too late even? Maybe, but I don't know. Maybe get in now before it gets even more saturated. So we'll see.
Yeah. The one potentially good news about that is that there are some people out there that have bought, really excited about getting into short-term rentals, but don't really know what they're doing. And unfortunately, now at this time of the market, when occupancy has gone down a little bit, I mean, not as much as I think people projected, just based on recession, whatever people talking and stuff. I've seen occupancy go down a little bit. And so some people who are getting nervous may be willing to sell their properties because they're just I got to get out of this. It's not doing as well as I thought it would.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm hoping, that, with this recession fears coming a little bit, that folks will get skittish, want to get rid of their properties, and, we'd be happy to take it off their hands. Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Hopefully, it's about finding the right
Right.
opportunity, finding the right
Exactly.
owners. But hopefully opportunity knocks, you see stuff go back up on the MLS and
Right.
there's always opportunities. Just keep your eyes out. But that's interesting. I mean, I think having a partner will help you to scale faster for sure. I guess it's the question of, you have to find a partner that has, the similar goals, but also can complement different skill sets that you have.
Right.
The short term rental, there's so much that you can automate, but at the same time, there's still different responsibilities that go in there. So finding someone that can do that together seems like
Right.
you can do it. I mean, I definitely know people that do it with partnerships. So why not?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard pros and cons of partnerships. Obviously, when you have a partner, you're getting half of the profit. So it's like, okay, there you go. Half of your profit is gone. But if you just, I don't know, maybe some folks have more time than others, there's that aspect of it. Maybe it would work for someone like us. And then again, we're just not physically close to the area. So maybe somebody who is closer. I think it would be best to try to find a partner in person. So we want to continue to go to different meetups, even if it means going to meetups, in different places in the United States, trying to find someone who we connect with, we feel comfortable with, who is also, someone who's also looking for a partner and trying it that way.
I mean, there's also tons of these Zoom like meetups going on. Like I host a meetup every week, every Wednesday for not specifically the short-term rental. We've had that topic come up. We have speakers every single week. So that's something and there are many, many others like that. I know Alex Sabio, I don't know if you've come across him. He's in Southern California and has an incredible meetup specifically geared towards healthcare professionals because that's what he is. But I'd say they talk about short-term rentals, half the time because that's what his specialty is. And he owns probably like 5 properties in the Smoky Mountains in Florida and stuff like that. So it's definitely doable to do it remotely and to find partners like that. But I would, suggest just looking on those Facebook groups. Like you got the short-term shop, right? The short-term wealth, short-term rental, long-term
short-term
wealth.
rentals, long-term rental. Yeah. Avery Carl. Yeah.
It's amazing. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you explored other asset classes though, besides for short-term rentals in terms of like passively investing or actively investing of any other types of things?
Well, it's funny because short-term rentals was actually not what I wanted to do. This is not what I wanted to start out doing. I guess when I sort of had this whole idea in the beginning that we were going to start investing in real estate, I thought multifamily is the way to go. Like multifamily is the true investing class that I want to pursue. And it just ended up happening that way. So, maybe one day once we, I don't know, get our short-term rental portfolio in a good place, have built up more capital, maybe we can pursue multifamily. But it just kind of ended up being with short-term being the path that we went down. Always have multifamily in the back of my mind though. So still just going to think about that for a little bit.
Yeah. Listen, there are still opportunities, keep it there, keep it not too far back because you never know when opportunity will come your way. There's a lot of people out there who are in your situation are doing that also and finding ways to invest either passively or maybe some of your colleagues or friends, in your community that want to invest and you can raise capital from them. It's a whole different kind of mindset, but it's definitely something that I've seen people do.
Right. Well, and I know Avery Carl has said that she invests in short-term rentals in order to do long-term rentals. So that's kind of something I've always had in the back of my mind. And yeah, I mean, it would be a whole other skill set to learn and, just a lot more research to do. So one thing at a time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, have you found any of your, experience through the commercial management of the office building, things like that? Has that been helpful towards running your short-term rental business?
It actually has very helpful because a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis is managing our tenants and what I do is manage tenants and manage the financials of the properties. So I'm essentially doing the exact same thing in short-term rentals. And, that was another consideration that I had. I thought, okay, I do this every day for a living. There's no reason I can't do it, on a day-to-day basis for my own properties. So it definitely has been handy. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the same skill sets transfer over.
I think it's really important to think about it. A lot of people may be listening to this and thinking, well, I can't get into short-term. I can't get into this. I can't do that. And we always have these things kind of holding us back. But at the same time, if you look at what you're doing now, and so many of those skill sets can be transferable into real estate investing. you just have to kind of sit down and say, okay, what are the things that I'm good at? What are these things? And believe it or not, many of the things that most of us do all day are transferable to, starting our own real estate business. And yes, it is a business. It is something that is going to take time. And you have to treat it like a business if you want it to be successful. So it's not just kind of like a one-off thing and okay, I'll buy a property and I'll manage it and, it'll be kind of like a side hustle. Yes and no, but I think if you want to treat it like a business and have it successful like a business can be and grow in that way, you really have to treat it that way.
Yeah. And I mean, anyone's skill sets can definitely transfer over. I mean, do you work with numbers at work? Yes. Okay. Well, you're going to be working with numbers too. You're going to be analyzing properties. Do you manage projects? Well, you're definitely going to be managing your project, getting it started up. Do you work in hospitality? Well, it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. Do you work with clients? It's the same thing. So there's so many skill sets that can be transferred over.
Yeah.
And I think it's just about, not letting that fear hold you back and just going for it.
Awesome. Well, you're definitely speaking my language there. I'm taking it in because like I said, I've been looking and I've been kind of holding myself back. I just got too many things going on for me currently, but it's definitely something I've been looking at getting into. So appreciate the encouragement and kind of your perspective, because hearing from different people really just allows you to think about it in a different way.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, Dana, I want to transition now what we call the final four. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First question, what is the worst job that you ever had?
Well, I can answer this one immediately. I would say the worst job I ever had was when I had to sell cotton candy at the fair, which was like a 6-week-long fair down in San Diego. And I was the cotton candy vendor for almost the entire summer. I will say that, this is when I was like, 13 years old. I will say that I think it gave me a sense of confidence that just sort of, I've kept my entire life. So it wasn't a good job. It also wasn't a terrible job for, the lessons that it did bring me, but it wasn't too fun standing in the sun for 8 hours a day, slinging cotton candy at the fair.
No way, for sure. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
You didn't have like a tent or something for you to stand under, an umbrella?
There was like a little umbrella that barely had any coverage and, somehow I made it through.
Wow. Well, good for you. A life lesson learned there.
Definitely.
Second question, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
I would say, and I know everybody says this, but I'm going to say Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, I think it's, the book that I know every single other person says, but it truly did. There was that paradigm shift after I read it, and I have just never looked back since. And I would recommend to anyone, if you haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it'll change your life.
100%. There's been pretty much, like you said, pretty much everyone. It's funny because a lot of people answer that and a lot of people answer in that way as well. But it's so true. It really is for most people. The funny thing is, one of the most listened to episodes of the Weiss Advice podcast was an episode where we had Omar Khan on the show. And he's a very successful multifamily real estate syndicator investor. And he literally had a segment on it. When I asked him this question, he's like, it's not Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And basically he said, like, reading that book made him dumber. That was like the quote of the episode, which almost no one agrees with, but it was great clickbait to kind of marketing to use that as, because that made a lot of people listen to it. If you haven't listened to it, it's good to hear his perspective on it. I guess he came from a much greater financial background and kind of knew all that stuff growing up. And so it wasn't like new to him. And so it was like, that was his perspective on it. Anyways, I agree with you. And I still like Omar, regardless of his opinion on the book. So, I
mean, I would say the biggest mistake that anyone can make with Rich Dad, Poor Dad is not reading it sooner. I was almost mad at myself after reading it that I didn't pick it up sooner, because I had heard of it a long time ago and I just never actually read it. So that is what I would say, that I wish I had read it sooner.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. Third question. What's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I would say I would like to be better at public speaking, or try to take the fear out of public speaking, because, if we're going to try to eventually raise capital, find a partner, what have you, I think that's a skill set that's going to be valuable at some point. So yeah, taking the fear away from public speaking. So need to read a couple books on that.
Well, yeah, good for you. And, just between me and you and everyone that's listening to this, you're doing a great job on this podcast. I don't know how many of these you've done, but I think when you look at public speaking, just like that, just being yourself and trying to give over, concepts that resonate with you and are important to you. Other people will listen and other people will, take that in. So I think you're well on your way.
I hope so.
And fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Now that I've had a child and, have started our family, I would say that success, I know it's financial freedom, in a way that a lot of people think about it is just being able to do what you want with your time. But that truly does resonate with me too, now that I have a son, which is that, if I want to take the day off and spend the whole day with him and not have to, rush into work and be there by 8:30, that's what success would be to me, is being able to spend my time how I want it with my family and not being reliant on a W-2 job to make that happen. That would be true success in my mind.
Awesome. Sounds like you're well on your way to getting there. So
we're going to keep plugging along. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. One property at a time. That's really the goal. Make that passive income, be able to pay for all your expenses and truly live the dream. So good luck to you on that journey, and really great catching up with you today. And where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Our listeners can find me on Instagram. I'm at STR Investor Dana, and look for me on Instagram.
Very cool. We will put that in the show notes, and hope you guys check her out there and check out their property in Northern California. If you want to get that, we'll try to put that Airbnb link in the notes as well. That's going to be a lot of fun, guys. Check it out. And thank you again for joining me today, Dana. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Awesome. And to our listeners, thank you guys for joining us once again to the end. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.